Hello everyone and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Hammond. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And today we have the latest on the situation in Los Angeles and more brutal detainments as the Trump immigration crackdowns continue. All of this and more coming up, but first, a look at the headlines. Top U.S. and Chinese officials meet in London for a second day of talks in an effort to keep a fragile tariff truce alive as tensions rise over export restrictions and tech controls. Russia unleashes one of its biggest strikes on Kyiv in over 3 years, hitting a maternity ward in Odessa. An offensive was part of a wave of bombardments Moscow says was in retaliation for Ukrainian attacks. The Palestinian president calls for Hamas to hand over its weapons and urges the deployment of international forces to protect civilians in Gaza, outlining his vision for a post-war peace plan in letters to both France and Saudi Arabia. Britain's unemployment rate climbs to 4.6%, the highest since mid-2021, as businesses feel the squeeze from a UK tax hike and new U.S. tariffs. And Taiwan's opposition-led parliament approves a $1,000 monthly allowance for volunteer soldiers, hoping to ease troop shortages as the island ramps up defenses against rising military threats from China. We begin in Los Angeles tonight, where protests over immigration raids by federal agents show no signs of letting up. The city has effectively turned into a military zone after President Donald Trump deployed at least 700 U.S. Marines and 2,000 additional National Guard troops, blaming unprofessional agitators for the unrest.
The people that are causing the problem are professional agitators, they're insurrectionists, they're bad people, they should be in jail. Thank you.
The Marines, active duty personnel from Camp Pendleton, were deployed to restore order, according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in a post on X. Now, this comes on top of the 2,000 National Guard troops already mobilized on Saturday, the second day of protests in the city. California's Governor Gavin Newsom blasted the deployment, saying U.S. Marines shouldn't be used against Americans on American soil to fulfill what he called a deranged fantasy of a dictatorial leader. In another post, Newsom announced California is suing the Trump administration after the president suggested supporting the arrest of the governor himself.
He's daring Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it?
I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it would be a great thing. He's done a terrible job. Look, I like Gavin Newsom. He's a nice guy, but he's grossly incompetent. Everybody knows.
The deployment of U.S. Marines is highly unusual, as such actions are usually reserved for extreme circumstances. Los Angeles Police Chief Jim McDonnell said the arrival of Marines posed a significant operational challenge and insisted the state's police forces were fully equipped to handle mass demonstrations. Meanwhile, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass criticized the federal response, accusing the Trump administration of inciting chaos.
We need to stop the raids. This should not be happening in our city. It is not warranted, and the only thing it does is contribute to chaos. We didn't need the National Guard. Why on earth? What are they going to do? Do you know what the National Guard is doing now? They are guarding 2 buildings. They're guarding the federal building here in downtown, and they're guarding the federal building in Westwood. That's what they're doing. So they need Marines on top of it? I don't understand that. That's why I feel like we are part of an experiment that we did not ask to be a part of.
Protesters lit fireworks and faced off with police outside a federal detention center holding immigrant detainees. The National Guard responded by forming a human chain to keep them back. Meanwhile, near City Hall, hundreds gathered demanding the release of a detained union leader holding placards and chanting slogans. Monday's protests remained largely peaceful, but now sporadic rallies are spreading across the country. And Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has vowed to expand immigration raids even as Los Angeles teeters under the weight of a militarized response. A city under military watch, a state suing federal government, and a nation on edge. And it's anyone's guess if this powder keg can be contained. And now moving to New Jersey. Months after President Donald Trump's harsh immigration crackdown led to mass deportations of Indians in shackles, a fresh incident at Newark Liberty International Airport has reignited outrage. The footage, which captured by an Indian American entrepreneur, shows a young Indian student being handcuffed, tied down, and pinned to the floor by U.S. authorities moments before he was deported. The student then cries out in distress while at least 4 officers hold him down, 2 with their knees in his back. The footage further shows that the student was visibly frightened and confused, repeatedly shouting in Hindi, saying, quote, "I am not crazy, and they are trying to make me mad." The clip since then has drawn sharp criticism online and reopened conversations about the treatment of Indian nationals in the United States. The Indian American entrepreneur who was at the airport to board the flight to India said he felt helpless witnessing the incident. In fact, he offered to help authorities interpret what the student was saying, but was refused, and instead, more officers were called in. In fact, when airline staff declined to let the student board, citing safety concerns, he was publicly restrained and removed from the boarding area. Now, following the public outcry, the Indian Consulate in New York issued a statement acknowledging the viral video and reiterated their commitment to the welfare of Indian nationals in the United States.
We have come across social media posts claiming that an Indian national faced difficulties at Newark Liberty International Airport. We are in touch with local authorities in this regard.
Now, the incident has also triggered fresh criticism of U.S. immigration enforcement, especially among Indian students and the diaspora. Many are now questioning whether the United States remains a safe and welcoming destination for higher education. So far, there's no official confirmation about the student's identity or whether he has arrived in India, and authorities are still working to verify the date of the video and other key details. But one thing is clear. This incident has struck a nerve, raising questions about the well-being of international students abroad and how far will the Trump administration go in pursuit of their immigration crackdown. And now we look at a major national security case. A Chinese scientist arrested at a U.S. airport in what's now the second such case in just a few days. The arrest happened at Detroit Metropolitan Airport when a female scientist arrived from China, allegedly carrying biological material without permission. The Federal Bureau of Investigation says she was trying to join a research project at the University of Michigan and had earlier mailed biological samples to lab staff there, packed inside envelopes and hidden in a book. Authorities say the material involves certain worms that require a government permit to import. And the FBI hasn't said if the material was dangerous, but called the incident a potential threat to U.S. security.
The guidelines for importing biological materials into the U.S. for research purposes are stringent, but clear, and actions like this undermine the legitimate work of other visiting scholars.
The scientist, a student at a university in Wuhan, planned to stay in the U.S. for a year, but instead got arrested on Sunday during questioning at the airport. Now, this comes just days after 2 other Chinese scientists were charged with smuggling a toxic fungus into the U.S., also via Detroit. The toxic fungus is known to damage crops and can be considered a biosecurity risk. In fact, it's classified as a potential agroterrorism weapon that can harm certain plants and result in billions of dollars of economic loss worldwide, according to an FBI affidavit in support of the complaint. Now, one of those scientists was sent back to China last year. The other, a researcher at the University of Michigan, remains in custody. And the duo, both in their 30s, faces multiple charges including conspiracy, smuggling, visa fraud, and making false statements. However, the complaint didn't mention if the scientists had motives to spread the fungus beyond the laboratory. A string of arrests at a single U.S. airport and growing questions over foreign research access. Investigations, it seems, are just getting started. And now to a developing story from the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump held a high-stakes phone call on Monday, just as Iran signaled it would respond to Washington's latest nuclear proposal. The conversation triggered an urgent security meeting in Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Tehran and Washington are preparing for a new round of indirect talks in Muscat as tensions over uranium enrichment, military threats, and coalition politics threaten to derail diplomacy. As the nuclear clock ticks, the region braces for what comes next. Here's more on the story.
Tensions are rising as a new nuclear deal with Iran hangs in the balance. And behind closed doors, the United States and Israel are moving fast. On Monday evening, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump spoke for 40 minutes. The call came after Iran said it would soon respond to America's latest proposal.
Very big meeting.
Donald Trump told Netanyahu that the US had made a reasonable offer to Tehran.
Doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious.
And he expects a response in days before another round of talks are set to continue this Thursday. However, Iran's foreign ministry says the next round is actually planned for Sunday in Muscat, Oman.
Yeah, we discussed a lot of things and it went very well, very smooth. We'll see what happens. We're trying to do something with a country we just spoke about, Iran. I think you should negotiate this. We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we're going to wait till Thursday.
Minutes after the call, Netanyahu called a top-level security meeting and to his cabinet he declared, "Prepare for what's next." While details of Netanyahu's remarks were not made public, but the Israeli leader cut short his corruption trial testimony to take the call. That alone says how serious things are. In Jerusalem, Netanyahu gathered senior ministers. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, Defense Minister Israel Katz, Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, Mossad Chief David Barnea, all present, all focused on Iran. In fact, according to Channel 13, Netanyahu instructed Dermer and Barnea to meet U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff before talks resume. Meanwhile, Trump spoke to reporters at the White House. He called Iran tough negotiators and said that the U.S. was trying to make a deal so there's no destruction and death. But he warned Tehran's demands are too much.
Well, they're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, it's just not acceptable.
Now, Iran hasn't officially replied yet, but Trump hinted they've shared feedback, and he did not like what he heard.
So we're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death. And we've told them that, and I've told them that, and I hope that's the way it works out, but it might not work out that way. We'll soon find out. Yeah, please.
The Iran issue isn't the only storm Netanyahu is navigating. Back home, his ultra-Orthodox coalition partners are demanding a new military draft exemption law, because without it, they may bring down the government.
There still is a chance that the ultra-Orthodox rabbis would not compromise this time and tell to Netanyahu, enough is enough, and either you bring us a reasonable or acceptable law, draft law for us, or we vote against you.
At the moment, Netanyahu is scrambling to hold the coalition together. This is a historic window of opportunity, he reportedly told them. We cannot afford to shake the foundations now. Meanwhile, the nuclear clock keeps ticking. IAEA chief Rafael Grossi issued a stark warning. Iran has told him that any Israeli strike could push Tehran to pursue nuclear weapons or walk away from the non-proliferation treaty entirely.
The big difference here is that we are talking about 400, more or less 400 kilograms of 60% uranium. It's a very high level of enrichment, so it is a delicate matter. But I think that if that was the issue upon which the agreement depended, I am sure that there will be more than one country which would be willing to assist in this case.
Netanyahu has told Trump that Israel won't act unless talks collapse. But if diplomacy fails and Iran pushes ahead, Israel may not wait for permission. So now, eyes turn to Muscat. Talks resume in days. Will a deal emerge, or will the region slip into further chaos?
And we end today with President Donald Trump and Greta Thunberg. The president has taken a break from indictments in golf carts to mock Greta Thunberg again, this time over her claim that she was kidnapped by Israeli forces while delivering baby formula to Gaza. Trump says she has anger issues. Greta's reaction? Likely another icy stare in a savage Twitter bio update. Here's our report on this political soap opera.
Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
A latest chapter has been added to the world's weirdest feud. It's Donald Trump versus Greta Thunberg again. This time, the American president has suggested that the young climate activist take an anger management class. Because when you have just been allegedly kidnapped by Israeli forces while delivering baby formula and sanitary pads to Gaza, what you really need is a yoga retreat, right?
If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped.
This comment came after Thunberg posted a video claiming she and other activists aboard the Freedom Flotilla had been intercepted and detained by Israeli forces in international waters.
Pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
The group's ship, the Madeleine, was packed with humanitarian aid for Gaza. This included flour, diapers, and now some political drama as well. Asked by a reporter about the situation, Trump, clearly not one to pass on a good roast, said,
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
Kidnapped by Israel, as she says? Was she kidnapped?
I find it. I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
And secondly, are you going to
Is that what she said? She was kidnapped by Israel?
Yes, sir.
However, this isn't Trump and Thunberg's first rodeo together.
Thank you, Excellency.
Trump and Thunberg go back like flip phones and fossil fuels. Their relationship began with a death stare and has only spiraled upward or downward from there. At a United Nations summit in 2019, Thunberg gave Trump the kind of glare usually reserved for slow walkers in a crowded airport. The moment went viral as Trump breezed past her to attend a meeting on religious freedom, skipping the climate summit entirely. Priorities, right? In 2019, when Thunberg was crowned Times Person of the Year, Trump could not resist tweeting. While responding to a tweet congratulating Thunberg, he tweeted, and I quote, "So ridiculous. Greta must work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Greta, chill."
Always ask me about Donald Trump.
Thunberg clapped back without saying a word. She instead changed her Twitter bio to, and I quote, "A teenager working on her anger management problem, currently chilling and watching a good old-fashioned movie with a friend." This is what is called mic drop, but bio-edit style. In a 2019 interview, Thunberg summed it up best when asked what she would say to Trump. She said, and I quote, "I wouldn't have said anything. I wouldn't have wasted my time."
How dare you!
After Thunberg's fiery, "How dare you" speech at the UN, targeting the inaction of world leaders towards climate action.
Yet, I'm one of the lucky ones.
Trump had tweeted, and I quote, "She seems like a very happy young girl looking forward to a bright and wonderful future. So nice to see." The translation of this is nothing but classic Trumpian sarcasm.
Stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
In 2020, when Trump screamed, "Stop the count," in all caps during the 2020 U.S. election meltdown, Thunberg, now an experienced shade thrower, returned the favor with surgical precision. She tweeted, and I quote, "Donald must work on his anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend." Chill, Donald, chill. Ah, sweet poetic justice. Moral of the story? Trump can keep yelling chill, but Greta Thunberg's the one who's been cool all along. Even while saving the planet and enduring world leaders' worst insults. So climate 1 and clapbacks 100.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you once again for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow, everyone. Thanks again for watching.